Welcome to the Lifeletics Podcast, a brand dedicated to the growth of athletes as they transition to life after sports. My name is Megan Rutter, former D1 swimmer at Florida Atlantic University. My goal here is to make all athletes feel empowered to take on the sport of life. Today we have Chaz Warrington. At an early age, Chaz found his passion for wrestling. His wrestling career led him to the WWE, which better known as his ring names, Chaz and Mosh, right? Did I say that right?
Yep, Headbanger Mosh. Absolutely.
Headbanger Mosh.
I've had a couple of different gimmicks, but that's what I'm best known for, yes.
Okay. So after your successful wrestling career, you transitioned into the business world like a breeze, right? Now you manage the South Florida region at Dex Imaging, and you can apply everything you learned from wrestling to really provide the best service to your clients and to hopefully make a positive impact on your community. Right now, I noticed you play outfield for a nationally ranked professional kickball team, the Meatballs.
Right. Well, I used to. So the Meatballs no longer play together. That was
Okay.
a few years back. But yeah, I still play kickball. Actually, this past weekend was in Jacksonville, playing in a tournament. And tonight I actually have finals in West Palm Beach, which will be two games, semifinals and finals. So literally over the last week, tonight will be games 11 and 12 for the week. So
Wow.
yeah, so it's what I like about it is when I'm playing, there's nothing else going on. I don't worry about work. I don't worry about home. I don't worry about anything. It's kind of that hour and a half. I guess that's my stress relief from everything that's going on.
Right.
But it's a blast. It's so much fun.
Yeah. Did you used to get that stress relief from wrestling in a sense?
In a sense, yeah. When I'm in the ring, I guess it's kind of the same thing. When I'm in the ring, that's kind of what I say is my happy place. There's nothing else going on. So you're in there, you're focusing on doing what you have to do in the ring to entertain people. So yeah, so I guess it's another way for me I still love it. I still love wrestling. I still love being in the ring. I just did a show the end of last month.
Mhm.
So I'm still doing it. It's still active doing it. So it's still fun. So yeah, I guess that is another way for me to have some stress relief.
Yeah. It totally makes sense. Everybody has their ups and downs, right? And it's really just important for us to find an outlet for all of that. As far as wrestling though, what got you into it? Was it something you grew up with? Did your family get you
No,
into it?
it's something. So I wrestled amateur from third grade through high school and a little bit of college. But it's something WWF, it was WWF back then when I was there. So WWF was something that I watched growing up. I mean, I watched all the early WrestleManias, I was a Hulk Hogan fan and Ultimate Warrior, Macho Man. So I watched all them growing up. And then I used to go over to the Spectrum in Philly to watch with my buddies and friends. And I always joked that one day you're going to see me in that ring. One day you're going to see me in that. And I just kind of fell into it. There was a wrestling school about 10, 15 minutes from where I lived. And at the time, I didn't know it was a school. It was called the Route 30 Flea Mart in Clementon, New Jersey. And you would drive by, and every now and then there'd be this big, giant white truck out front and a very bad spray painted handwriting on the side. It would say pro wrestling Saturday night. So one Saturday night, I had nothing to do, and I went in and I sat there and I watched it, and it was the cheesiest stuff I've ever seen. It was
Oh,
now again, it's independent wrestling, which I wasn't very familiar with. The only thing I was familiar with was WWF on TV, and then going over to the Spectrum to watch it. So it was a totally different thing because obviously there's different levels. It's kind of like
mhm,
you have triple A ball, single A ball, and then you have the major leagues.
mhm.
So I went and I watched, and I thought it was the cheesiest thing I've ever seen. But
What was
after
cheesy about it?
just the I don't I don't want to say performance, just the different level. I mean, I was used to watching, like I said, Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. So I'm watching guys at the very, very top of their level.
Mhm.
Um, to go watch these guys who were brand new, basically, because it was a school, they were just training to learn. It wasn't as good. It
Yeah.
wasn't as good. So I look at it and I'm like, this is awful. Like these guys, like I was expecting, I guess, more of a WWF experience or style, I guess, is what I was expecting. So afterwards, I hung around, and the person who happened to be the heavyweight champion at the time, I started talking to him, and it turns out that we kind of knew of each other because our high schools wrestled each other, and he wrestled in high school. And we started talking about the school and stuff like that. And he was like, "Oh, you should come down and try out." And I was like, I'm like, at this point, I was still kind of wrestling. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was like 170 pounds soaking wet. And I said to him, I said, I'd have to put on tons of weight because he's like 6'4", 240, this guy. And he's like, no, the best time to learn is as you put weight on, because if you just all of a sudden put all this weight on, your body's not going to know how to move. So he said, as you put weight on, he said, you learn how to do everything. So I was like, okay. So I went back the next week and I had a tryout. And it was Larry Sharp who owned the school, and the school was the Monster Factory. Larry Sharp, who owned the school at the time, his stepdaughter had a field trip there. Her class had a field trip to the wrestling school. So I had a tryout in front of 30, like, 10-year-olds. And
Wow.
there were 6 of us. And Larry said, I only take the best. I won't take all of you. So make sure you go out there and you do your best. And I'm thinking, it's only gonna take a few of us, a couple of us. Like, this is a school. You're gonna take everybody because you want the money. Well, it turns out out of the 6, right on the spot, he only offered 2 of us spots. The other 4
Wow.
said because, and it makes perfect sense now that I know, and I realized after the fact, that he wouldn't bring anyone in who he didn't think could make it or be good, because the last thing he wanted was someone to go out and be awful at one of these other shows and say he trained at the Monster Factory because it makes the school look bad.
It's
So,
all about the reputation, huh?
yes,
Yeah.
big time. So I went, I tried out, I got accepted. The school was 3 grand. I went to my credit union. I took out a $3,000 loan, and yeah, that was it. It kind of just went from there. And Glenn, who was my wrestling partner now, he was the champ at the time. He was the trainer at the school. So we've literally been together since June of '93.
Wow. What a journey.
Yeah. And then, it kind of snowballed from there. I think my whole wrestling career just was meant to be, because once something happened and something else happened and it just, the progression just got better and better and better. I was training at the school for 3 weeks when
Wow.
WWF rolled into town, and they used to do the Saturday morning superstar shows where you just see the superstar and you see this other guy just basically getting the crap kicked out of him.
Uh-huh.
You always knew who was going to win because one was a superstar and the other one wasn't. So they rolled in, and Glenn, my partner, he said to me, he said, "Hey," he said, "so WWF's coming to town to do a TV taping. When they come here, they used Larry's students, so we're going to go." And I looked at him. I said, "I'm not ready for that. I barely know how to take a bump. Like, I've been here 3 weeks." He's like, "They won't use you. Don't worry about it." He goes, "You're going to go get paid. They'll see you." He said, "And then the next time, maybe they'll use you. But either way, you're going to get paid and it'll be fun." So I'm like, okay. So 3 weeks in, I'm in a wrestling school. Now I'm in a WWF locker room with Macho Man, Heart Connection, the Heart Foundation. I mean, you name it. I'm in a locker room with all these guys that I've been watching for years. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? He goes, go out there and do whatever he tells you to do. I had no idea,
Wow.
but it's hysterical because I'm out there now. I'm in a WWF ring in front of, I don't know, 10, 15,000 people 3 weeks in, and I'm covering my mouth like this because the whole time I'm laughing and smiling, going, I can't believe I'm actually in a WWF ring. And then the next night, same thing. I had another match with someone else. So before I had what I would consider my first like real match, I was already on TV 6 times, just
Wow.
getting beat up, but still, it went from that to, and, the next step of leaving to go to Memphis, and the next step of that, and then so it kind of all just led to that belt right there.
There we go. This is awesome. And now this is over how many years was it that you ended up getting into your first WWF ring?
So my first so this was June of '93, July of '93, I was there, and my first match on TV. My first official contract with WWF, I got in November of '96. So it
Okay.
was my first contract, which was a part-time deal. But that led to us getting a full-time deal, and I was there until '02.
So that was only what was that, like 6 years that you were fully with them?
Um, yeah, but I mean, I say I was with them for 10 years because prior to that, I was still probably, once a month was doing
Right.
something with them. So yeah, full
Okay.
time for 6, part time with them for say 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Now, this type of wrestling and this type of sport, I mean, you truly have an identity. Like you were saying, you're known by these names, you're known by this team you were with. What is it like to be able to separate yourself from who you are to who you are in the stage?
Um, you got to keep your feet on the ground. Yeah, I was hate to use the word famous, but
Mhm.
I was on TV a couple nights a week. Couldn't go into restaurants and eat without being bothered. Because when I was there, it was one of the biggest errors of all time. It was one of the hottest times of wrestling. So no matter where I went, it was you were being bothered. But I had one experience with Pete Rose. So Pete Rose was my all-time favorite baseball player. Growing up, I loved him. He played for the Phillies. I grew up right outside Philly. So I would dive headfirst into home plate in Little League games and literally get kicked out of games because you're not like you weren't allowed to do that. He was my favorite. I would go over. My grandparents had season tickets to the Phillies, so we'd sat right behind first base. So it was WrestleMania 15, I think it was 14 or 15 in Boston, and, Pete Rose was there, and
Wow.
he was one of the celebrities that was there, and he had a locker room, so there was a big long line to go in. Whenever celebrities would be there, like, everyone wanted to take pictures and say hi and, talk to them for a couple minutes. I waited to be the very last one to take the picture with Pete Rose because I just wanted to talk to him for a couple of minutes. I didn't wanna feel rushed. I just wanted to have, I wanted to have that moment with him,
Yeah.
being a huge fan of his growing up. So I walk in and I'm all excited and take the picture. And I tell him all this that I just shared with you about growing up and being a huge fan of him and sliding head
Mhm.
first, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, "Oh, that's nice." And I was like, "Okay." And then I said, "So," I said, threw out the first pitch at the Phillies game. I said, this past September, I said, "The Phillies played the Reds." I said, "And your son, Pete Jr., was on the Reds at the time." I said, "So I got to meet Pete Jr." And I said, "Pete and I have like kept in contact. We've hung out a few times." And he's like, "Oh," he goes, "So you're the wrestler that he talks about all the time." And I'm like, "Jackpot, I'm in." I'm like, "This is my way in." And I'm like, "Yeah, yes." And I'm like, "Yeah, he's such a great guy." And he's like, "Yeah, he's a good kid." He goes, "Are you the last one or is there anyone after you for the picture? Or are you the last one?" And I went, "Oh, shit." So I was like,
Wow.
"Yeah." So I walked out and I sat down and one of the guys walked by me and they're like, "Did somebody just die or did your dog just die or something?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Pete Rose just died, like, just killed it off." So, my point of sharing that story is from that day forward, I was always like, I'm gonna be humble about what I'm doing and where I'm at, but if, like, a fan or somebody comes up to me, I wanna make sure they have their moment. I don't wanna
Mhm.
blow it to never have anyone have to go on a podcast and tell a story like that about me. So
Yeah.
I guess my point of that long tangent is I just always learned that keep my feet on the ground. Yes, I have a job that puts me in the spotlight, that puts me in front of people. But at the same time, it's just a job. I'm a normal person like everyone else. It's just a different, weird job that I happen to be on TV for. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a different job than other people are used to. And at the end of the day, you still deal with all of the day-to-day
Yep.
issues. You gotta pay bills, you gotta do all these things, you got dogs to take care of, you have a son, like, these are all things that you, just as a human, are
Yep.
still a part of.
It's all stuff that everyone else has to deal with. Everyone else has the same issue. Everyone has the same issues, the same stuff.
Mhm.
Like you said, family, bills, you got this, you got that. Just because I was on TV or in the spotlight doesn't change it. A lot of people think it changes it because you are on TV or you're this or you're that. But it's even like today, like baseball players and football players and guys in the NFL, they're just like us, except, they're a little bit more famous, but they still have the same
Yeah.
everyday issues as everyone else. And some of the guys, it's worse because you can't go out in public and you can't do
Right.
certain things because people hound you. And I get when, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I was sitting at dinner and somebody, you're putting food in your mouth and someone comes up with a piece of paper. Hey, man, can you sign this? Hey, can I take a picture? Airports, we would go to
Yeah.
the bathroom stalls and sit to avoid people, but it would follow you in and pieces of paper underneath the stall while and I was like, come on, guys. Like, and then you understand, you hear stories about some celebrities that, just assholes and, to tell people to F off and do this and get away from it. You can only take so much.
Yeah.
But I've always tried to stay grounded about that. But it's just, like you said, everyone's got the same issues. It just is what it
Some
is.
are a little bit more in the spotlight.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Just got to
saw a
deal with
recent
it.
video of, Justin Bieber, and people were outside of his home and, like, screaming for him, and he straight up turned to the camera and said, "Listen, guys, the same way after a long day of work, you guys wanna come home and rest, I do too.
Yep.
Please respect my privacy and leave."
Yeah.
And I thought that was so fair, and it's so good for him to stand up for himself because at the end of the day, like, he's a human and he needs space.
Yeah. You need that time to detach and
Yeah.
have your alone time and, reset. But again, there's probably a lot of people that were out there going, well, you're in the public eye. You should be used to all this. And, this is expected of you.
Mhm.
Well, it's expected of you. It's not expected of us. Like when I'm
Yeah.
out performing, then yes, you have all access. But when I'm home, like that's my sanctuary. Like
Right.
don't invade the sanctuary. So,
Do you feel that this sort of spotlight really hindered or changed your transition outside of your sport?
I think it did at first.
Okay.
Because at first, when I first left WWF, I knew I wasn't being re-signed. I had just moved. I was just getting into this whole copier thing that I thought would just be kind of part-time, temporary, because I always thought I'd either go back to WWF or I was talking to Japan also. I thought there was a chance of me going to Japan to wrestle for a while. So the copier thing was supposed to be kind of just, I'd have bills to pay. Let me, while I'm figuring out whatever's going to go on. So at first, yes, because I was like, in my, part of me was like, I would go around like cold calling and doing business stuff and things like that. And I was kind of not fresh off TV, but still recent enough to where, people still, I still got recognized every now and then. And
Mhm.
they're like, so 6, 7 months ago, you were a WWF superstar and now you're out here like pimping copiers. And I kind of went,
Like, when you put it that way.
yeah. And that's what I kind of did. I kind of went, well, oh, yeah, yeah, I guess. Like, I guess I wasn't that good. And like, well, you didn't make that much money that, Stone Cold and The Rock made. I'm like, I wasn't Stone Cold or The Rock status. So yes, I made good
Mhm.
money, but I can't retire. And, I got a family and, I got to do what I got to do. So at first, yes, because I had to cope with that. I had to figure it out. So one of the things I did was I let my hair grow out and I kind of like, I don't want to say detached myself from wrestling, but when it came to the business side of the copier world that I was in at that point, I didn't let the two of them mix. I kept them
Mhm.
totally separate. It took me a while. It took me probably a good 7 or 8 years before I was able to go till I figured it out. Um, so I was successful doing the copiers at the previous company I was with. I was doing really well. I still wrestled here and there on the side, but it wasn't until I figured out that this is who I am and I needed to embrace it. And then I realized talking about wrestling, what to me in my mind is the greatest icebreaker in the world because once I mention it, people want to talk about it and it
Mhm.
totally separates me from anyone else.
Yeah.
So it took me a while, but once I embraced it for the longest time, like on LinkedIn, I put nothing about wrestling. I put nothing on there. And then I sat and then I had a cup of coffee with Steve Noodleberg and Noodleberg was like, dude, you got to put that on LinkedIn. He's like, that's your brand. That's who you are. So it was kind of him having that conversation with me about bringing it out and saying, this is my brand. This is who I am. People do business with people they like. So that kind of helped me, kind of exploded everything for me.
Right. Now, I watched your interview with Steven. He sounds like a great guy, and he's definitely had a lot of influence on you, which is great. And I've noticed, you out of all the social media platforms, you seem to take advantage the most of LinkedIn. Um, and, you know, you did struggle a little bit with embracing that personality of what wrestling is, right? A
Yeah.
lot of people, it's a very quirky type of sport. You guys, like you had mentioned, you're wearing all these different kilts and whatever. Um, what was that like, and how's the response been since you embraced it?
It's been a lot better because again, I can talk about it and it's not because my whole thing was like, especially with LinkedIn, I was always like, LinkedIn's a business platform. I didn't really know how to use it. I knew there was something there. Steve kind of taught me how to use it. But my thing was, if I put wrestling on there and I get a CEO or a CFO search me, because as we all know, as a sales rep running a sales team in an organization, you want to do research on the people you're trying to meet with because you want to find
Right.
that commonality with them to connect with. Well, it's the same thing. When a CEO or CFO has an appointment with me, they're researching me. So my fear always was if they saw, here's this guy in a skirt jumping around, spitting in the air and, pouring hot wax on himself, they'd be like, this guy's a goof. Like, I don't want to meet with this guy. He's a goof. Um, so when I embraced it, it changed all of it. And, it's just a matter of realizing for me, just be who I am. And
Mhm.
I am who I am. If you don't like it, then like I say, I am what I am because there's Popeye back there.
Yeah.
Popeye's my favorite. And, I am what I am. That's what he said. And that's how I am now. It's like, this is who I am. Sometimes we're not all going to be a fit for when it comes to business or even friendships or whatever it is, but this is who I am. Take it or leave it. If you want to leave it, that's fine. There's plenty of other people out there. So it's not a big deal.
Yeah. Absolutely, and being able to just really separate the fact that, like, you're not dependent on those relationships, you're not dependent on that business, you're not dependent on any of that stuff. You have confidence in yourself and confidence in who you are
Yes.
to know that you can go out there and it's gonna be the right fit for somebody else. It's gonna be there are billions and billions of people in this world, like,
Yeah.
we'll
And
be okay.
one of the things business wise also that changed with me just kind of going out there and being who I am and not worrying about it at this point is my business relationships. A lot of them were just business. They were transactional. When a lease was coming due or if there was an issue or a problem, that's the only time I spoke to my clients. But now a lot of them are friends. So it's turned from business to a friendship to hanging out and going to get happy hour or going to a baseball game or a hockey game or a soccer game together and meeting their families and stuff like that. So that's been a big change with it also because I've been able to just be more open of who I am and, bringing that side out of it. So it makes a big deal that way because as we all know, it's all about relationships.
For sure. And networking is a super big power. I mean, that's how we met, right?
Right.
Like we were just at a networking event and I was like, these people are super cool and like how do I get to know them more? So, uh, what would you say right now is your biggest struggle outside of wrestling?
Outside of wrestling,
Yeah.
um, my biggest one right now may be dealing with the fact that my son's leaving in a month to go to college. It's just gonna be
No.
me and the dogs.
Oh,
Uh,
where's he going to college?
he's going up to UCF in Orlando, so
Okay.
it's far enough away, but close enough, at the same time.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, things for me now are good. I have 0 complaints about anything. Business is good, and yeah, so it's just a matter of finding a balance and everything.
for sure. You had mentioned already that you wrestle still as
Yep,
well as you are on the kickball team.
still
So,
playing kickball.
yeah. So that seems to keep you busy. Do you practice for that? Do you train for it?
Well, some kickball we do some if a tournament's coming up, we will get together and practice. But I play 2 or 3 nights a week, and it's usually the same group of people I play with. So those games are kind of practice. As far as wrestling goes, there's no practice anymore. Just get in the
Yeah,
ring, just get
just
in the
go
ring
do
and
your
do it.
thing.
It's just a matter of training. Like I just got back from PT because I blew my bicep tendon, so I had surgery. Um, So I had surgery, what, 12 weeks ago.
Was this the only injury you had in your career, or what else?
Well, the funny part is most of my injuries are from playing kickball.
Oh my goodness.
Wrestling is very minor. Like I had chipped teeth, stitches in my lip, broken dislocated fingers, blew my plantar fascia ligament off the bone, twisted ankles, what I consider minor stuff. But kickball's been a different thing. I did this playing kickball.
Wow.
Um, I dove for a ball in a championship game. When I landed, it just popped it and tore the bicep tendon straight off the bone.
Oh,
Yeah, I blown my ankle and had hairline fractures in my leg from playing kickball. So
wow.
it's all just it's just every day for me. I just keep going. I was
Yeah.
asked I was asked the last month, they're like, "So when are you gonna slow down?" I'm like, "Slow down? What am I gonna do? Sit on the couch at night? Like, what am I supposed to do? There's no slowing down." Don't
Yeah.
know what that means.
No. And at the end of the day, it's something that fuels you, right?
Yeah,
It's like a passion for you, and, like, you always enjoyed being involved in athletics in some way.
yeah.
And I think I was the same way, I was eager to find out, like, how can I transition swimming, right, to outside of sports? One of my biggest things was, like, I missed the team atmosphere. Swimming by yourself is not fun.
Right.
It's, like, very boring. So, now I'll swim in the ocean, and that's a little bit different atmosphere, and then, I'll transition that to triathlons, and so, in a way, it's been great, but I think I still need a good group
You
to
want that
stick with.
support. You want
Yeah.
that support around you. I get it. That's probably the thing with kickball. Like, I'm super competitive. I don't wanna lose. I wanna win. Um But at the same time, it's about like I'm playing on a team on Wednesday nights. We actually named the team because there's a group of us, and a couple of the guys were like, "Oh, I'm not sure I'm going to play." And I'm like, "Listen," I said, "We play because we all play together and it's fun." I
Mhm.
go, "It's all about togetherness." So I made a team. The team name I'm playing with in Delray right now is called hashtag Togetherness because,
I love it.
and I got because again, Tyler, my son's leaving for school, so he's 18, so they let him play. So he's playing this season
Mhm.
with us, which has been amazing. Um,
Awesome.
so yeah, so it's all about having that camaraderie and being around other people that you enjoy and just having that support and at the same but having fun at the same time with everyone else.
Yeah. Now, I wanna be mindful of your time and everybody's time that's listening. Now, what would you say if you could go back and talk to yourself while you're transitioning? What would be your top 3 pieces of advice you'd give to yourself?
Um, the biggest one would be just be yourself, be you. Um, Everyone else is taken, so don't be someone else. Like in wrestling world, people will be like, "Oh, did you guys try to be like LOD or did you try to be like the Rockers?" We are like, "No, we tried to be ourselves because being ourselves separated us from every other tag team out there." Wearing skirts with heavy metal t-shirts and face paint on, nobody was doing that. So
Mhm.
separated ourselves from everyone else. I mean, that would be the biggest thing to me. It's just be yourself, be you. It doesn't matter what it is or what you're doing, as long as you're not hurting anyone, you're not doing anything illegal or unethical. Just be you and enjoy life.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it so much. I mean, I know it's no easy transition for a lot of people, whether you're at the college athletic level or you're at professional level. Some sports are different. Like this one comes with a full identity.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, you're almost like acting, right? In a way.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned that in the reason you transitioned to sales, you've been selling yourself this whole time.
I've been
And
selling since I was a kid. I mean, selling candy bars or jewelry, or my brother and I used to sell lawn services when we were growing up. So, yeah, it's just selling. You're selling
yeah,
yourself. You're selling it like for wrestling. I'm selling a storyline. I guess the difference with business side is I'm not really. I guess I'm selling decks. I'm selling the company, but it's all wrapped up into one neat little package, if that makes sense.
yeah. If you could talk to any current athletes that are about to go through the transition, what's your number one piece of advice?
Um, don't get lost in your own head. 'Cause that can happen. I know lots of wrestling friends who basically when wrestling was done with them, they didn't know what to do with themselves.
Mhm.
So just keep your feet on the ground. Don't get lost in your own hype of, like, for a while, like I said, I was just 6 months
On
ago, I was
top of the
just
world.
WWF superstar on TV every week. And yeah, now I'm walking around with flyers, cold calling, trying to pimp copiers.
Mm.
So it just, you gotta do what you have to do for you and your family and just take care of yourself. And as far as that goes, but don't get lost in your own hype.
Yeah, and be confident in what you're doing.
Yep.
Yeah, and why you're doing it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. The good part for me with the copiers is when I started seeing success, I thought, wow, okay, so I can do this and be home now every night instead of being on the road 300 days a year and still make good money. So once I realized that, that kind of changed for me also, because I wasn't going, what am I going to do? And, things like that, because wrestling, I was making really good money.
Yeah.
And obviously that's a concern when you leave of, how you're going to take care of yourself and your family because you're used to a certain lifestyle.
Mhm.
But you make adjustments and you pivot and you do what you have to do.
For sure. Thank you so much, Chaz. I
No
really
problem.
hope that if anybody feels compelled to reach out, they can find you on LinkedIn. Um,
You can find me
Chaz
on
Warrington,
LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun, happy
all
stuff.
that. Amazing. Well, thank you for your time.
Yes, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Talk soon. Bye.
Bye bye.